So I follow a YouTuber that basically documents every single thing that's happening in New York City. I must confess, I don't watch relationship podcasts unless it's my own. I gotta confess, I don't really know what's going on in the rap culture and the rap community unless you guys send it to me in an email. I'm not familiar with whatever the latest modern woman is doing because we too busy running the bag up. But I do. And what is in my algorithm is some of the most productive conversations and YouTubers and content creators across the face of this planet. And I watch some YouTubers that basically document, put together, highlight. It's a couple different things that I like to watch that's not necessarily related to the money. I like to watch animal videos, so the National Geographics and seeing how lions hunt and tigers and alligators and Discovery channels and all of that. I do watch that. And I watch car channels. I love car channels. Shout out to Scooby Don. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly. So I like to stay up to date on whatever the latest news as it relates to electrification and exotic cars and what cars is being introduced and what is Kia and Hyundai doing and what the latest brands is. I'm watching the latest Lucid Gravity, which is the SUV that just dropped. And so I've been looking at that. And so my guilty pleasure and the thing that I like to understand is A, what comes back to the money, B, what's going on with animals, and C, cars, right? Those are my things. That's basically what shows up on my algorithm. But I do like to watch some phenomenal YouTubers that basically document different things that's happening within the community and societies. Some of them bigger, some of them smaller, but they definitely are doing some great things. And so I want to introduce you to one of the platforms that I like to watch on a regular basis, right? And this guy's name is Cash Jordan. Cash Jordan basically documents every single thing that's happening in New York City. And so what popped up on my algorithm today was basically how New York City is also engineering a way to make homeless people uncomfortable. Let's continue with the show.
What the heck are these things?
And why are there 5 of them?
So this looks like a metal covering for the subway vent, which is underneath it. At first I thought it was a bench, but you can really only sit on this corner of it. You'll notice that the top of this is incredibly uneven. And then there's these raised ridges, which are on all 5 of them. And what happens if you try to lay down on it? Is that even possible? Oh, that is like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced. This ridge right here is going into my spine, and that's on purpose, and this is called hostile architecture. And critics of hostile architecture say that usually these types of installations
Are cruel and unnecessary because they target the needy.
and we're gonna look at a whole bunch of examples of this.
Subway benches that serve no purpose, a train station designed to make you go crazy, and several parks that look nice, but were designed to be so uncomfortable that you'll leave after 5 or 10 minutes, and they're all here in New York.
Now, hostile or defensive architecture consists of public installations like this, which are designed to do one thing while preventing another thing. This right here is a normal uncovered subway grate.
And in the wintertime when it's cold out, someone with nowhere to go might want to use an area like this to help keep warm because warm air comes out of here.
And right now, New York City is experiencing record homelessness.
And lately, both private developers and the city have been building all sorts of things like this, but they've got to be really sneaky about it because when I found out what these were, it made me pretty uncomfortable to realize that they were specifically designed to stop people who have nothing from staying warm in the wintertime.
So what they're doing is introducing hostile architecture. Instead of having a solution for homeless people to go somewhere in order to get themselves back together, get back on track, and then ultimately becoming taxpaying citizens, which should be the objective that we have, or having to allocate resources towards police officers or whomever it is that own private property to have to shoo them away or prevent them from being able to stay there or sleeping on grates, because I'm passionate about homelessness. I think that homelessness and fatherless homes are the two most important issues, one of the most important issues on a national level that's plaguing and affecting this country. Homelessness and fatherless homes, okay? And so instead of New York City, right, dealing with things based off of the core root of the problem, they're solving for their issues, especially as it relates to them being a tourist destination, by having hostile architecture, which basically makes it uncomfortable for you as a homeless person or for a person that has nothing to do what you've traditionally done in order to keep yourself warm or comfortable throughout the United States of America, or specifically New York. So they create these grates and they create these situations, even the benches. They put the handles, the rails, to where you can't lay on the whole bench. If you do sit there, then you have to sit in a small spot upright, and it makes you very uncomfortable, which would then incentivize you to leave. Those grates that basically give breathing to the subway would then prevent you from actually laying on it to get warm, especially at night or in the wintertime, because they have these grooves in it that basically punish your body, and it makes it uncomfortable for you to sleep on them if you are a homeless person, right? And again, I am passionate about this. I do not believe in van life. I do not believe in the fact that you have to be in this country and you have to sleep on the pavement overnight because for whatever reason, right? And I think that it is a literal crisis. The crisis before the migrant crisis was a homelessness crisis that largely was going undressed all across the United States of America, especially over in California. Especially over in California. The crisis before the crisis was the fact that we had homelessness and tent cities and van life. When you seen van life starting to explode on YouTube, I automatically knew, okay, so this is just going to get bad. This is really going to get bad. And so in order for them to address an issue without actually having to be vilified as a result of it, they just engineer a different solution instead of saying that we need to get rid of the homelessness because we don't want tourists bothered by all of these people that's on the street begging and pleading for something to eat every day.
Is that okay? And sometimes when cities build stuff like this, people find out and get really upset.
And that's what happened 2 years ago when the city started introducing hostile architecture.
6th Avenue subway stop, and it looks like a normal subway station, but it was the site of heated controversy when the city subway, the MTA, introduced hostile architecture to this station. A couple years ago, riders noticed that the benches in this very same platform were suddenly removed.
And as you can imagine, people were not happy about that. Not only because of how cruel it might seem towards certain individuals, but also because the elderly, people who are pregnant, there's other people that need benches in the subway too, and this was a quality of life hit for everybody on this platform.
And the benches were originally along this wall, and look at what the replacement is.
Is this even a replacement? I mean, you can lean on it. I guess this is better than leaning yourself against the wall, which might be dirty.
It has spots for 4 leaners.
Now, there are 2 benches in this platform,
which were put back after the city realized that their decision had outraged people.
but even these have elements of hostile architecture in them. Look at these armrests. All you can do is sit here. You can't lay down. This is only like 2 feet wide. Its only purpose is for sitting. It is hostile to any other intended use. Look, you can't even be that wide in here.
Some people even suggested the city had violated the Americans with Disabilities Act by removing the benches.
And this isn't the first time the city had done something like this. Check this out. A year earlier, the city had removed all of the seat backs from the benches on a subway station just a couple blocks south of this one. The city claims that once they did that, they saw a reduction in the number of people loitering on the platform,
Along with an increase in the number of passengers who were on the platform waiting for trains.
but by removing the seat backs from the benches that were already there, they essentially did exactly what this is by creating something that's less functional and lowers everyone's quality of use when they're in the subway.
And I'm noticing that this is a trend because look at all the people standing with nowhere to sit. You see these concrete patches right here? There was something here. It was probably a bench. It looks to be about that wide.
There's one other over here by the door,
And there are no benches anywhere else.
just one more spot to lean right over there.
And before we look at how now the city is using these same type of designs at a brand new train station and a bunch of public parks. It's important to understand that this is exposing the dark side of this type of architecture, because there might be benefits as far as the orderliness of the subway system is concerned, but New York City gets pretty cold in the wintertime, and the subway is a place where needy New Yorkers go when they have nowhere else to go so that they don't freeze. And yes, the city has shelters, but they have a rather poor reputation, and because of New York's asylum crisis, the shelter system's already maxed out. And since the shelters are perceived as being dangerous, it makes tons of sense that people would rather take their chances in a place like this. And removing subway benches doesn't do anything to make people less homeless. They're still homeless, even if you remove the benches, and they've still got nowhere to go. And most critics of these types of policies, they want a clean subway too, but they don't really think it's fair to take from people who already have so little. And the city.
So y'all gonna have to make a decision. Because I agree with you, No Cap Finance. Y'all gonna have to make a decision. Because most people will say, well, and this is the dilemma that the people have, okay? Most people will say, well, I want a safer city, or people, I don't want homeless people that bother me, or whatever, so on and so forth. But very few people actually want to solve for it. You're right, No Cap Finance. It was not meant for a bed. It's not meant for a bed. So there's two things that you basically have to solve for. And I see over 1,900 people in here, and we're going to continue to get the likes up because the likes is looking a little bit anemic. There's two things that we want to solve for here. A, you need to solve for homelessness in general, because Cash Jordan is correct. Just because you can't lay on the benches does not mean that you necessarily solve for the homelessness crisis. One of the issues that came along with the migrant crisis, and the reason that they allocated it as a crisis, was so that they can hopefully get federal dollars designated to them, and also give absolute power to the mayor to be able to make decisions on behalf of what happens during this migrant crisis, and to allocate funds and resources towards the spaces that they need to be in. Shout out to J Dubs. I'm going to read that shortly. But the other side of the conversation is those resources should have been allocated to making sure that you put people in a better position to then get themselves out of homelessness, in which you invest in people, and then they then start to spend their tax dollars and investing back into the city by becoming tax-paying citizens. The goal to solving homelessness has nothing to do, and there's always going to be poor among us. I understand that. The goal for solving homelessness is to put people in a position to be able to help themselves. It's not always just to give people a place to stay. It's not for free housing, because we already seen how housing projects basically create crime. It doesn't necessarily solve for the problems of people being low income. You have to give people opportunity, and then you have to continuously be reinvesting in the rehabilitation of their lives if they start to fall between the cracks, because it then starts to become a burden on everybody else, because they have to then continue to allocate their resources and their tax dollars and their uncomfortable lifestyle and form of living to supporting then a group of people who basically is going to be that way until the end of their time. This is why it's important to reinvest in America. This is why it's important for us to, we don't have, and shout out to Cash Jordan. I'm going to move on from that because I got to go ahead and continue with the show. The reason why America can't take on more people, but I do believe that immigration, legal immigration, should be a good thing, because we want the best and brightest of everywhere all across the world. But we should not be responsible for taking care of other people when they country and their elected officials and whoever it is that they have in office should be taking care of them. They need to solve for their own homes. You got to solve for your own home. You got to get the beam out of your own eye before you start to have any conversations about what you can do for somebody else. The reason why America needs to put America first. Am I about to run for president? You know what I'm saying, out here in these streets? The reason why America needs to put America first is because we don't have capacity to be able to solve for anybody else's problems before we solve for our own. We don't have the capacity to solve for anybody else's problems before we start to put things in place to solve for our own. We have issues with regard to our budgets. We got issues with regard to homelessness. We got to solve for these motherless homes or these fatherless homes. We need to reinvent where we allocating our resources as far as these family court laws and these child support laws, where billions of dollars is being allocated into places that they're not supposed to be. Social programs is now becoming a lifeline instead of becoming a rehabilitation tactic to help people get back on their feet. We don't have the infrastructure, the laws, the leadership. We don't have the capacity to be spending on nobody else. We need to cover our borders and invest more money into our infrastructure. It's failing. Our bridges is failing. Our people are failing. Inflation is high. We don't make anything anymore. And now all of a sudden, everything that we do is based off of making money out of thin air. And that's why y'all got this mindset that y'all need to become interdependent on banks in order to continue to create money. That's not how a thriving economy and a thriving society works. It's not. That's not how it works. You can't create something out of nothing and then think that it's going to continue to not be anything more than a pyramid scheme or a Ponzi scheme. That's not how it works. It's all interconnected. Whether y'all agree with it or not, and this is one of the reasons why y'all need to get on board with this mindset that I have, that I continue to preach to y'all. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat, is because we're all interconnected, similar to Avatar. What you do affect me, and what I do affect you. So when you rob your brother, then it then turns into you creating a generational curse. They then create more children that we then have to pay taxes on in order to make sure that we create a system to keep them either in jail making license plates so that they can somehow, some way show themselves to be productive citizens, while at the same time funding a prison system that's then incentivizing you to continue to create rap songs that then drive more people into poverty, that then turn into crime, and then they start to get payday loans, and then you get in a position where you then start to vote based off of being under duress, and then it all comes back to me because they're saying that they want to tax the rich, and then I create another system because I'm smart enough to understand, well, rich is not ever going to pay taxes because I just need to reinvest in myself. So the money never circulates back to the people, and then y'all start getting mad, and then you over there, and you want to protest, and you want to strike, and you say you want $25 an hour, and you work at the Waffle House, and then we start to close the Waffle House because I'm not about to pay you $25 an hour. I'm just going to out-innovate you. Then we start to see more technology taking place, and then AI is going to start to replace you. You start having less. You start having less. We start getting rid of the middle class. Rich people get richer. Poor people get poor. We never actually continue to make things better. And so as a result, we start to bring more migrants over here in order for them to fill the jobs that you don't want to do because you entitled and you don't want to continue to do what you're supposed to do. But then you send your child over here to get student loan debt, and then they start to vote wrong because they believe Biden is going to take care of their student loan debt and going to forgive them. But Biden never did it. And then the Congress members is holding you hostage. And then the government is going to say that we want to continue to shut the government down because we all divided. And then you're going to say, well, you're not black enough because you voting based off of being Republican. But the Republican actually understands that we need smaller government, but he can't communicate that effectively. And so as a result, it all comes back to me, and then it goes back to you, and it turns into a blame game until you have to reset the whole system because most people don't understand exactly what it takes in order to run a country, let alone vote for somebody that's going to work in their own best interest. That's the truth. It's a cycle. We're all interconnected with each other. So if somebody becomes homeless, eventually it's going to become your problem, even though it's not necessarily right in front of your face. You're incentivized to do the thing that's in your best interest. You're incentivized to take care of your brother. This is why the word is actually the word, because it tells you that you need to love your brother as you love yourself, because that brother is largely going to become a burden for you if you don't do the thing that's best for him, which is what's best for you. It's best for me, for you to be successful. This is why I don't understand people hating on each other. I would never want you to not feed your family. I would never want you to suffer. I would never want you to go homeless. No matter whether or not I disagree with you or I disagree with your lifestyle, I agree with your humanity because your success is my success, even if we don't necessarily agree on one particular issue. I don't have no smoke for people, and I don't want nobody to actually suffer as a result of not being able to feed their family or to suffer based off of a decision that they make that they didn't know was what was best for them, because what's best for you is best for me. I want you to win even if I don't like you, because it then becomes a burden on me. I don't win when you don't win. This is why I don't understand haters. This is why I don't understand people that want to see other people fail. This is why I don't understand forgiveness, because when I forgive you, I forgive me. Forgiveness is for me, not just for you. This is what you don't understand about greatness. This is what you don't understand about spirituality. This is why you need to be well-versed in every aspect of your life, not just finances, not just women, not just relationships, not just with politics, not just with all of these things that you think make sense. This is why you need to study. This is why you need to understand things. This is why you need to understand when I say something that may criticize what it is that you're making a decision about, I'm not criticizing you, I'm criticizing me, because if you don't do the thing that you're supposed to do, then it becomes a burden for everybody. And then we all got to share in the burden. similar to what's going on in New York, similar to what's going on in Chicago. They not sitting here saying that we just need to tax the citizens of Chicago. They saying we want to draw all Americans and the federal government to help us with what we made a bad decision doing and becoming a sanctuary city because we not being accountable and we not being held accountable by the very people that voted us in the office in the first place. We're all interconnected. We're all interdependent on somebody else doing the right thing in order for us to be okay. It's not just my burden. It's not just white people burden. It's not just black people burden. It's not just rich people. It's not just women. It's not just men. It's all of our responsibility to do the thing that's in the best interest of everybody else. Unless you don't care about yourself, then you don't care about your neighbor. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the finesse. That's what life is trying to teach you. That's what God is trying to teach you. Unfortunately, we don't live to be 300 years old to where we can actually do the right thing. By the time you get old enough or by the time you get wise enough to see what the real mistakes of what you live your life like, you die off and then somebody gets that residual value, and that's why the kids are paying for the sins of their fathers. It don't get no realer than that. It don't get no more straight up than that. This is the reality of what you have to deal with every single day. You are only as strong as the weakest person that is around you. If one person drown, eventually we all gonna end up at the bottom of the ocean. It's just a matter of time.